Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the Backyard Gardens podcast.
If you like what we're doing and you want to continue to support the podcast, head over to our Patreon page to sign up.
You can also make a one-time donation using PayPal. Both of these links are in the description.
With your support, we can continue growing and helping others in their gardens. See ya.
Do I eat the top? Do I eat the root? All I know is you should be growing turnips right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast, Minisode.
To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Welcome to the Backyard Gardens podcast, where we talk about all things gardening and give the information out for you to be successful in your garden, whether it's your first or your last. We are your hosts, Ben, the backyard gardener, and
Batavia, the front yard gardener.
one in the country,
One in the city.
Now get ready as we dig deep into this wonderful world of gardening as we learn to grow and grow for change. Turnips, my personal favorite thing to grow, I think, in the fall and winter. So, what do? We're going to plant turnips early in the spring or fall when it's still cool. You don't want it to be too cold. You don't want it to be too warm. It needs to be around 60 degrees for it to form bulbs, but it can start before that. So remember that. If it's 70 degrees outside, then you're right in line for it to form bulbs, but you should be germinated and actively growing by then. And it takes roughly 70 days to harvest. So, and that was an average I took. Some websites said 60 to 85, and 85 was more on the rutabaga side. So, ooh, bless you.
Thank you.
We went ahead and said 70 days to harvest. And then spacing, this is really square foot gardening friendly. You can put 4 in a square foot. I tend to put 3 in a square foot because I like to do funky patterns when I grow them. And I like to give it just a little bit more space in case I want to get a little bit bigger of a bulb. So, but it depends on also what you're growing them for, which we will get into later on into this episode. So
can we go later now?
No, we have an order. We cannot go out of order.
Okay, all right, fine. So be careful of not over-fertilizing, especially if you're growing for the full plant. So the full plant will be the root and the leaves. You want to make sure that you have kind of an even balance fertilizer. We've talked about 10-10-10 a lot in the episodes previously, because you don't want to only have leafy greens if you really want those roots. And those roots are where it's at, baby. We didn't mention they are cold tolerant. They're not as hardy as some of the other ones in this series, but they are cold tolerant. I have a neighbor, and this is just truth moment. She grows turnips in the summer only for the leaves, loves them. She gets I almost said shit ton, but I don't want to swear on this episode, so I won't say shit ton.
Yeah, don't do that twice.
She gets a whole lot of leaves, and she loves them. But to your point earlier, spring and fall, I am ready to move on to things like companions. And did I miss anything from special notes?
You know what? The one thing I would say is I would go back to the spacing real quick. And if you're harvesting them for just the greens, you can just scatter the seeds out. I would say that's the one thing I did kind of miss because I don't consume them that way, but I know that's how people do it, especially down south. But
let me just add one other thing.
Yeah.
You can actually just cut them from at the root level.
Yeah.
And they'll continue. So that's a cut and come again kind of trick, if you will. And they'll continue to grow a whole new set of leaves if you're lucky.
Yeah. So you can do companions. Go for it.
So I don't know that I had companions in my list. I think that's where I ran out.
So
I have a bunch of foes and pests.
I'll take companions in because it was very difficult. And so what I did is I made a big assumption because nobody wanted to talk about turnips. They only wanted to talk about rutabagas. So that being said, the difference between a turnip and a rutabaga is a rutabaga takes about 100 days to get to a harvest, but it's much, much, much bigger. So that's the key. So what I did is I kind of I kind of went through the rutabaga list and just kind of tweaked it a little bit because it made sense. So rutabaga will attract beneficial insects, supposedly. Beets return iron back into the soil, and chives will keep aphids away and spider mites. And then if you have beans in the ground, you can start them when your beans are finishing up, and then that will add the nitrogen back in to kind of help give them a boost. The only thing I will say about that is typically the beans don't add the nitrogen until the roots start to break down. So keep that in mind when you're planting these things. I think that's something that's overlooked a lot of the time is like people think, oh, I'm growing beans, so they're injecting nitrogen back into the soil, and the actual time it does that is when it starts to break down after death. So there's that. Yeah, and so the list for foes is rather long, so go ahead, Batavia.
Yeah, so some of the foes are similar root crops. I shouldn't say similar, are root crops because they rob the soil from the same kind of nitrogen, or same kind of nutrients. So things, and I've planted them together, so there's that. But we're not talking about what I do, really. We're talking about what you should be doing. So things like parsnips and carrots can compete for the same types of nutrients that you have for your turnips. So one could argue that those are foes. I do have a list of some of the things like tomatoes and fennel again are considered foes for turnips. Again, I don't know who's planting fennel in their garden, but if you are, don't plant them near your turnips.
Apparently, don't plant them anywhere. It's bad.
Yeah, you gotta have a whole kind of fennel bed. I do think that I just want to comment on the companions. Anything that you need loose soil for, I think it's good to kind of follow with after your turnips because they absolutely will loosen your soil up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're not a tillage. They're not a tillage crop though, so let's not trip on that. Tiller crops are something that would actually go down and till deep. These will not do that. So I actually have different.
They're more like beets.
Like surface tillage or surface looseners. So I actually have different foes than you. I have cabbage, which attract moths. I have mustard and broccoli, which compete for nutrients. I have Brussels sprouts that take away nutrients. And I don't know the difference between compete and take away, but they were clearly labeled that way. So just keep that in mind. And cauliflower, which attracts bugs. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you one thing I do know. Cauliflower is the bitch of the garden. Nobody likes it. Everybody hates it. I grew turnips next to mustard last year and had an awesome harvest in my greenhouse. So there's that. And I just, I amended with soil and all that stuff. So with compost and, fertilize. So I don't know what the deal is with that. Pests, aphids, flea beetles, root maggots, white worms, slugs, and snails. So I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not a fan of root maggots. Maggots in general, just really like a visceral gagging reflex response for me. So I'm going to pray that I never get those.
This is the only kind of root vegetable that we've had in this particular series. And things like your snails, your slugs, things like your our favorite roly-polies, like those are problems for any roots, especially those that are going to pop up off the surface, like we were talking about for turnips. So you're going to have like someone munching at those turnip bottoms. So just keep that in mind.
Right.
It absolutely, I recommend mulching your entire garden, but be careful of what you're using as your mulch. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole completely.
Come on, we got 7 minutes. Let me go.
It could draw in things that you don't want to eat. My rutabagas, as an example, although we're talking about turnips,
same thing, basically.
We're a little bit nibbled on.
Yeah.
Rutabagas do have a much more earthy taste than I think turnips. Again, maybe a personal preference.
Well, my family are Vikings, so we love rutabagas. So that's just kind of how that is. I grew up eating rutabagas. Didn't even know that they were so similar to turnips.
A turnip farm next year, like your radish farm this year. I want to plant all of the turnips next year. Dude, for the full plant.
Turnips are amazing. So, do you have diseases?
I do have.
I have some.
Maybe I ran out then.
I have a lot.
Okay, you go for it.
I don't know how to pronounce it. So help me out, people. Everybody at the same time. Anthracnose. Don't know what it means, but that's what it is. Clubfoot, leaf spot, scab, mosaic virus. Here's another one. At the same time, everybody. Rhizocontania rot, root knot, white rust, and the biggest thing is to rotate these things. So it's because this is a root vegetable, a lot of the diseases are going to affect the root, but the problem is that root is what we eat, typically. So that's something to kind of keep your eye out for. Man, why they got to have these big names? It made me feel like an idiot reading them out loud in front of all these people.
Have you experienced disease in your garden for turnips?
I have never. The only thing I've ever experienced for my turnips is blissfulness. That's the only thing I've ever experienced. I mean, I've like the bugs and stuff, but you know, as far as diseases, now see the trick is with diseases is I might not know what I'm looking at, but when I look at them, I may have. Like, if it's dead and like it didn't produce, I'm like, oh, well, either it didn't get watered, it got too cold because I'm growing them basically in the winter, or, you know, such and such, or, you know, I always chalk it up to something else. It could very well be disease. I don't know. Now, I definitely, like in my greenhouse where I grew them last year, I rotate them to a different section of the greenhouse for sure. So there's that.
And we've talked about the idea of rotating in advance of, you know, a disease or pests, like, you know, making a home. So you may just be outrunning some of these diseases. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about harvesting?
Yeah. So if you're using just the tops, then you can use cut and come again, right? If you're using the full plant, pull that full plant up, baby, and eat it all. The harvest, though, when it comes to the full plant itself, including the crop, I'm going to say fist size, not a child fist, an adult fist size is what you want the turnip bottom to be. I've harvested mine smaller because I knew it was going to be close to bolting. So I just pulled it up and they're still edible. Yeah, that's what I have for harvesting.
I like mine smaller.
Yeah, a lot of people just, you know, it's a chance of the vegetable not being as tasty if it gets too large, right?
Well, hold up your fists. You got smaller fists than me, maybe about the size of your fists, like 3 inches in diameter.
Maybe a small, maybe a 9-year-old child's fist.
Yeah.
We're just going to call it, well, maybe you shouldn't find a 9-year-old child, but if you have a 9-year-old, look at their fist.
Look, and don't be promoting bad stuff on the show.
There are some types which I didn't find because it wasn't as big of an interest in me. For me, there are some types that are promoted for just leaf growth and leaf harvesting. So if that's an interest of yours, you can look for that variety. If you haven't tried the root itself, don't make this your next step. You got to go the full, got to go all in on it.
Dude, try the root. I promise you, try the root. Just try it.
So some bonuses, you know, soups, roasting, like those are all great options for some of these root vegetables.
Let me go into something interesting. Not that wasn't interesting. I feel like that was really rude, and I didn't want it to come out that way.
That's okay. I wasn't listening to that part, so I missed it. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I have a nutritional information. And what I did is I broke it down into 2 things. Okay. I broke it down into turnips and potatoes. Okay. So turnips, 1 medium turnip is a serving, 34 calories, 8 grams of carbs, 2.2 grams of fiber, and 1.1 grams of protein. It's very specific on this one when I looked it up. It's shocking. So potatoes. Now this is stunning to me. And I've been doing this for years, but it's validation now that I actually have it written down in my little fancy gardening notebook. That is. But a potato, 1 medium potato, is 103 calories, so 3 times as many calories, 37 grams of carbs, which is 4.5 times more carbs, 4.7 grams of fiber, and 4.3 grams of protein. So why is this fascinating to me? Because carbs are a big issue in our food today, in our diets, and we eat a lot of it. And this is a good way to cut down on the amount of carbs while still enjoying what it is by cooking half potatoes, half turnips, and mixing them together. and you'll get a nice different flavor, but you'll also be able to cut down. So when you do it, remember turnips are more watery than potatoes though. So that's it. And we are going over soon. So everybody get out, grow some turnips. And potatoes got something to say. Go quick.
Bonus fact, I didn't look this up for the other vegetables, but turnips have been growing for over 3,000 years. How cool is that?
Damn right. Love them. From the ancient times all the way to the modern times. We love you guys. Stay safe. Be cool. Grow some turnips.
See ya.
A lot of y'all asked, how can you help support the Backyard Gardens podcast? Well, we have been busy and we have created a t-shirt line just for the gardener.
To visit our shop, go to the link in the show notes and check out the t-shirts and other goodies we have.
Now, these are super special t-shirts designed just for the gardener, so enjoy. Thank you for supporting the Backyard Gardens podcast, and we'll see you guys after the harvest. Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you want to see what we're up to or just stay up to date on all the announcements regarding the show or anything gardening, then you can follow us on Instagram at Backyard Gardens TV.
We love seeing what you guys are doing, so use hashtag BYG podcast in your posts, and we'll be sharing your gardens with the Backyard Gardens community.
And check us out on YouTube at Backyard Gardens, where we will post this show, all of our other shows, clips, and then also some gardening tips and just gardening entertainment. And you can see us at our website at backyardgardenstv.com. But that's it for today's show. So help us as we learn to grow and grow for change. And until next time, we'll catch you guys later. We'll call this one a wrap.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.